You think Game of Thrones is only about crowns, dragons, and betrayals. Let me pull you off the high towers for a second and bring you down to the muddy roads. Because some of the most important people in Westeros weren't born with banners above their heads. Some started with nothing, and still ended up shaping kings. Today we're talking about Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk, one of the purest, most stubborn, most honorable forces George R.R. Martin ever dropped into this cruel world. A hedge knight, an orphan, a walking castle wall with a conscience, and the man who quietly changed the future of the Seven Kingdoms, long before the events of Game of Thrones. So pour yourself something warm, settle in, and let's ride. Dunk doesn't begin in a castle. He begins in Flea Bottom, the part of King's Landing where people don't dream of glory, they dream of surviving the week. No famous family, no proud name, no inheritance waiting in a chest. His father? Unknown. His mother? Gone so early he can barely hold her face in memory. He grows up as a street boy, hungry, rough, and invisible to the world that matters. And that's the first reason Dunk's story hits so hard. He's not a chosen one. He's not promised anything. Then a traveling hedge knight crosses his path. Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Not a great lord, not a tournament legend, just a wandering knight with an old sword, worn armor, and the kind of quiet decency Westeros tries to kill. Arlen takes Dunk in as a squire, and for years they move from place to place, road dust, cheap inns, cold nights. Dunk learns how to ride, how to fight, how to care for armor and horses. But the real lesson Arlen gives him isn't technique. It's the idea that knighthood is supposed to mean something, not just a title, not just a shiny cloak, a promise. Then, on the way to a tourney at Ashford Meadow, 209 AC, Sir Arlen dies peacefully in his sleep, and Dunk is alone again, except now, he's holding a life he doesn't fully own. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sir Arlen never formally knighted him. No witnesses, no ceremony, no sworn vows spoken before other knights. So by strict rules, Dunk isn't really a knight. But Dunk makes a choice that defines him forever. He takes Arlen's gear. He cuts his hair short in mourning. He steps onto the road with that sword and that shield and tells the world, "I am Sir Duncan the Tall." Is that a lie? Technically, yes. Is it theft? In a way, yes. But Dunk doesn't wear that title to gain power. He wears it because he believes he must live up to it. And that's the paradox of Dunk. He feels guilty about not being officially made a knight, yet he behaves more like a true knight than most men who were. At Ashford, Dunk walks into the tournament world like a stranger crashing a royal feast. And the first thing people notice, he's massive. Nearly 7 feet tall, broad, strong, not pretty in the storybook way. Dunk isn't the charming court knight with a perfect smile. He's the kind of man who looks like he was built to hold a gate closed. Then he meets a bald boy with a hard mouth and fearless eyes. Egg. Egg insists on becoming his squire. Dunk refuses. Egg argues. Dunk refuses harder. Egg basically attaches himself like a stubborn little curse. Dunk finally gives in because that's also Dunk. He tries to be tough, but he has a soft spot for the helpless, even when the helpless is annoying. And what Dunk doesn't know is the biggest twist of all. Egg is actually Prince Aegon Targaryen, a royal kid traveling in disguise. So yes, Dunk unknowingly picks up a Targaryen prince like a stray cat. But the real crisis at Ashford isn't Egg. It's Dunk witnessing something vile. Prince Aegon Targaryen, Egg's older brother, attacks and humiliates a young woman, Tanzel, a puppeteer, simply because he can. And this is where most men in Westeros would look away, because Aegon is royal blood, because a hedge knight has nothing to gain and everything to lose. But Dunk doesn't calculate like that. He reacts, he steps in, and he hits a prince. Not a threat, not a warning. He physically puts hands on the dragon's blood and beats him down to stop it. In Westeros, that's basically suicide. Dunk is arrested. Execution hangs over him like a blade. And then comes the ancient, brutal option. A trial of 7. 7 champions against 7. Dunk needs 6 men to stand beside him. Who would risk death for an unknown hedge knight? This is the moment you see Dunk's strange power. Not politics, not charm. Moral gravity. People can feel that he did the right thing. One by one, fighters join his side, and the last one is the most shocking. Prince Baelor Breakspear, heir to the Iron Throne and one of the best men in House Targaryen. Baelor stands with Dunk because justice matters more to him than family pride. The fight is chaos. This isn't a neat duel. It's a storm of steel. Horses screaming, bodies falling, blades cracking on shields. Dunk fights like a man who refuses to die because dying would mean injustice wins. Dunk's side wins. But the victory tastes like ash. Baelor Breakspear is mortally wounded, and Dunk is left with a terrible kind of guilt. A prince, one of the few good ones, died defending him. Dunk walks away alive, cleared of the crime, but changed. And then Egg finally reveals the truth. He's Prince Aegon. Instead of sending him back, Dunk keeps him. And that decision creates one of the most important friendships in Westerosi history. A couple of years later, Dunk and Egg aren't living in songs. They're scraping by. They enter the service of Sir Eustace Osgrey, an aging landed knight whose glory is mostly memory now. The land is choking under drought. People are desperate. And Eustace is locked in a bitter conflict with his neighbor, Lady Rohan Weber, the Red Widow. The official dispute is over a stream, water rights. But like most Westerosi conflicts, the real fuel is older. Pride, resentment, old wounds that never healed. This part of Dunk's story is important because it shows he isn't just a fighter. He's forced to become something else, a mediator. He sees what war between petty lords would do. It would crush the small folk first, as always. The peasants would burn while the nobles argued about honor. Dunk tries to prevent bloodshed, not with clever speeches. Dunk isn't a silver tongue, but with stubborn integrity and an almost painful sincerity. And little by little, the truth surfaces. The feud is personal. The stream is just the excuse. Through grit, awkward diplomacy, and the simple fact that Dunk refuses to treat common people like disposable dirt, the situation turns. And in a twist that feels almost unreal in Westeros, peace comes. Even more than that, a marriage alliance. Rohan and Eustace end up joined, stitching the feud shut. Dunk doesn't win a battle here. He prevents one. And that's a different kind of knighthood. Arguably, the harder kind. Then we hit 212 AC. White Walls, Lord Butterwell's grand wedding tourney. On the surface, it looks like celebration. Jousting, feasting, knights chasing glory. Underneath, a dangerous plot. Supporters of the Blackfires are gathering, planning the spark of another rebellion. Dunk and Egg don't arrive as spies, they arrive as travelers. But Dunk has a talent for noticing when something feels wrong. Too many secrets, too many careful smiles, too many men watching instead of cheering. A mysterious champion appears in the lists, literally called the Mystery Knight. And Dunk, for all his thick as a castle wall self-deprecation, is sharper than people think. He starts connecting dots. He pushes Egg to be careful, he asks questions, and the conspiracy cracks. Because the Mystery Knight isn't just a random masked warrior. It's Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven himself, the King's Hand, moving in disguise to identify traitors. The plot collapses before it can ignite. The would-be Blackfire figurehead barely escapes, and Prince Maekar arrives with force to shut the whole thing down. And here's the wild part. Lives are saved, Because Dunk paid attention. Because a hedge knight who isn't clever refused to be blind. So what makes Dunk special? Not just his strength, not just his size, it's that he's almost painfully honest. He can't lie smoothly. He can't play court games. He doesn't know how to pretend. He also has an instinct that feels rare in Westeros. When someone weak is being harmed, Dunk moves. Even when it's stupid. Even when it costs him. That's not heroic in a shiny fantasy way. It's heroic in a human way. And his friendship with Egg is the perfect balance. Dunk teaches Egg what the realm actually looks like at ground level. Hunger, fear, small people crushed by big decisions. Egg teaches Dunk reading, politics, the shape of power. They grow each other up. One of the most beautiful symbols tied to Dunk is his shield. At first, he repaints it with a simple sigil, an elm tree on a sunset-colored field. Not a dragon, not a lion, no flashy legend, just a tree. Steady, stubborn, sheltering. And over time, that shield changes. It gets battered, repainted, marked by events like added shooting stars after white walls. The shield becomes a diary you can't write with words, and that feels perfect for Dunk. He isn't a poet, but his life leaves marks. Later history tells us what Dunk becomes. He rises high enough to join the Kingsguard, the 7 sworn shields of the king. And not only that, he becomes Lord Commander. Think about the distance there. Flea Bottom orphan, hedge knight with no formal knighting, commander of the most elite order in Westeros. And who is the king he serves? Aegon V Targaryen, Egg. The prince who followed him as a squire becomes king, and Dunk stands beside him. That partnership shapes the realm. We also know how Dunk dies. At Summerhall, 259 AC, a tragedy consumes the royal family as Aegon V attempts something dangerous, dragon hatching, and fire takes everything. Accounts say Dunk dies trying to save his king, and of course he does, because that's how Dunk operates. If there's someone to protect, he steps in front. He lives like a knight. He dies like one. But Dunk doesn't vanish after death. His bloodline continues, somehow, despite Kingsguard vows, because later we learn there are descendants. And the name that hits like a thunderclap for Game of Thrones fans is Brienne of Tarth. Brienne, mocked, doubted, underestimated, who clings to honor even when the world laughs at it. If you ever wondered why Brienne feels like she stepped out of a different moral universe than the rest of Westeros, that's Dunk's echo. Even a shield linked to his sigil is remembered in Tarth's history. Elm tree, shooting star, like a relic of what knighthood was supposed to be. Dunk's adventures happen about a century before the main series, but his fingerprints are everywhere. He helps stop the forces that could fracture the realm further. He shapes Aegon V's worldview. Aegon becomes known for caring about small folk and trying to reform a brutal system. Those ideas don't come from the Red Keep. They come from walking the roads with Dunk. And Summerhall's tragedy connects to the later story too, because it's tied to the atmosphere of prophecy and fire that surrounds later Targaryens. Dunk is one of those characters who proves something simple. In Westeros, being decent is revolutionary. So that's Dunk. Not a perfect man, not a brilliant man, not a polished hero. Just a stubborn, honest giant who keeps choosing the right thing, even when it hurts him. And maybe that's why people love him so much. Now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Dunk moment? Is it the day he stood up to a prince for a helpless girl? Is it the slow, messy diplomacy during the drought? Or the way he and Egg feel like the most genuine friendship in the entire history of Westeros? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden histories of the Seven Kingdoms, hedge knights, lost princes, old rebellions, and all the threads that lead into Game of Thrones, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, keep your sword sharp your heart stubborn, and your honor louder than the world.